All right, everybody, this is a rant. This is as close as the videos I make get to being just full-on rants. This is based on something I saw on Twitter, conversation that's been going on for a little while, a couple of years, honestly, on and off whenever a movie like this gets released. And I wanted to put all my thoughts out here because I feel like by now, I've had them all, and I think this keeps kind of coming up and going, and I want to have just the definitive video. And the video is why we need intermissions. We need them in movies. They just need to happen. And I think the arguments against them don't really work for me. And I think the arguments for them just make too much sense. Now, the reason we're talking about it now is because Martin Scorsese just released Killers of the Flower Moon in theaters. It is apparently very good. I haven't seen it yet. We'll get to why. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro, because that's the rules, because Martin Scorsese. But then you also got like Lily Gladstone, Jesse Plemons, all kinds of people. It is apparently 3.5 hours long. It will also release on Apple TV Plus, I believe, in about a month. Maybe a little bit less. I think it's in theaters for at least a month. And like I said, I haven't seen it. I'm looking forward to seeing it. But here's the thing. There have been plenty pro and plenty anti intermission people talking about why they think this movie specifically could use one. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not telling Martin Scorsese how to make his movie. And I'm not telling Thelma Schoonmaker how to edit her movie. What I want to give is the perspective of someone who is going to wait until this movie comes on VOD or, streaming Apple TV Plus to see this and just want to explain to you why I think we got to do this, why I think this is helpful, why I think this benefits everyone. And based on what Martin Scorsese and a lot of these other people who make these very long movies have said, I would assume they would also be on this train. So in my mind, there's a couple of movies that stand out as your 3+ hour movies, right? The Irishman is one of them. Another Martin Scorsese movie. Another Martin Scorsese movie that went to streaming. That was on Netflix. I don't remember if that happened immediately or a couple weeks after as well. Avengers Endgame. Wakanda Forever, I don't think was 3 hours, but it was close. Oppenheimer, I believe, was 3 hours. And now Killers of the Flower Moon. It is something that even if a movie isn't 3 hours, it does seem like a lot of these movies tend to just in general be long, right? Like The Flash. Very long for a movie about a superhero. Those didn't used to be 2.5 hour movies by default. That has become the standard now. I do think part of it comes from people like Scorsese or Christopher Nolan making good movies that tell good stories over the course of 3 hours, well utilized. And then other people seeing that, and that now feels like a prestige thing, right? It's like, oh, if your movie is 3 hours long, that means it must be good. It's kind of like how people buy board games, right? Most board games come in a box. And a lot of the boxes, there's really 3 sizes of boxes for board games. It's very small ones that are just cards, bigger ones, and then really bigger ones. I think there's an expectation of how much a board game is worth that does come with size. And because of that, sometimes you'll see games packaged in boxes that are so much bigger than they need to be. And I think it's because they're like, well, if we want to sell a game that's $30, it has to look like a $30 game. And I think that's somewhat true of movies now in general, is we are moving towards that. Avatar 2, another very long movie, although I don't remember if it crashed the 3 hour line or not. But either way, this is something that happens more frequently now than I remember it happening as a kid. Every so often you get a 4 hour movie or whatever, but it used to be kind of an event, but it wasn't a once a year event. And if it was, those 3+ hour long movies were not the biggest, most expensive, expected to be seen by everyone movies. Now, I do think the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about the intermission is the audience, but I want to start with the theater because I think that is, for me, the clearest argument for why we should be doing these. And people will say, I've never experienced this. Indian movies tend to have an intermission in theaters. It's expected, even so much that they will just throw an intermission into the middle of a movie that comes from America. They'll just go right about here, and I'm sure that is not ideal, but that is how movies are watched over there. So there's places that have intermissions. There's also just art forms that have intermissions, right? Like musicals. There's some musicals like 6 or whatever that are on the shorter side, but most musicals you expect to go in and have a nice little intermission about halfway through, maybe between second and third act. So it isn't unprecedented. It's not like we have to invent this. And it's happened in movies before, although it's very, very rare. I've heard people say that some theaters have contracts that prohibit intermissions. Even if that is true, this is a movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, made by Martin Scorsese and Apple. If anybody could change the rules, it's them. Christopher Nolan and Oppenheimer got some of the movie theaters to change add extra space on their projectors so that they could project the whole movie. The movie studios and the movie theaters understand each other. It's well, this is a movie you're going to make a lot of money on if you make this change that we've decided needs to be made. So I'm sure they could make the change if they needed to. But beyond that, in his big old interview from a couple weeks ago, one of the things Martin Scorsese said was that he really cared about saving the movie theater experience. And out of everything in that interview, I cannot agree more. The movie theater experience needs to be saved. I, as a kid, loved going to movie theaters, and I do think the vibe in a big way has changed. Not fully, it's not like movie theaters used to be perfect, but like, man, phones being out has really affected how people watch movies, what people expect from movies. Obviously, I do think the pandemic has changed how much people expect to, see their phone, use it as a second screen during a movie in a way that is not good. I think Netflix and other companies do promote that. We know that that's something that they've said, like, we want our shows to be like second screen kind of content where you have your show out, but then you also have your phone out and you're scrolling Instagram, whatever. That is not good. And I'm not saying this is all the youth either. Plenty of the time, older people older than myself are the people that have their phones out. Like, it's a general etiquette problem. No one age or gender or race or anything like that is responsible for this. But on top of that, one thing that I think is hurting the movie theater experience is the price of the ticket. We all know that, right? The tickets have gone up in price. Maybe not in a way that's so different. Like, if you look at it on a graph of how much a movie ticket used to cost based on inflation, it might not be that much more expensive, but it does feel more expensive, right? A $15 movie ticket, especially when 3D movies used to be the way you would have a more expensive movie ticket. Now they just kind of got rid of those, which is great because it was stupid, but the movie tickets are all kind of still very expensive. It's a lot. And then if you want to go see Oppenheimer in 70mm, and then you're paying like $30 a ticket or something crazy, that is not ideal. But movie theaters got to make money, and we need to pay the movie theater so that we can enjoy the movie. Now, a 3-hour movie comes with a problem, right? Unless they are charging a more expensive ticket price, which they tend to not do. Like I said, you can get away with it with Oppenheimer 70mm or even like IMAX Plus, because now you go on like ticket websites and there's like 5 different options for which version of Oppenheimer you want to see in the theater you're going to. That, I think, is a little too complicated, but also just invented to kind of go, oh, this is actually real D IMAX D, so definitely that's another $2, and then you get there and it looks exactly the same. But if a movie theater has a specific amount of screens and a specific amount of time in a day, like they can only be open from noon to midnight, if that is something we all kind of understand, then a shorter movie can play almost twice as much. Like, with breaks and, the time between movie theaters where you need to clean them, you play a 90-minute movie maybe 7 times in a day, but you can only play a 3-hour movie 3 times in a day, 4 times in a day maybe. So the max amount of tickets you can possibly sell to both, the 3-hour-long movie, is way fewer, which means movie theaters make a lot less money on that movie. Now, hypothetically, if it's an Oppenheimer situation, Oppenheimer versus, say, Flash, and nobody's going to see the Flash and it's shorter, but the Oppenheimer's longer, but more people are going to see it, then that's great. But assuming we can kind of control for quality, the ideal time of a movie for a movie theater is short. But we know movie theaters make money on concessions. And I think one big problem with the intermissionless movie is it discourages drinking soda or water or whatever. It discourages concessions because you're going to have to use the bathroom. And you have to go, well, if I want to have a big bowl of popcorn and a big old drink, what is that? Like, am I going to be 2 hours into this movie and have to go to the bathroom? And then is that going to ruin the experience for me? And I think some people, maybe not all, but some go, I'll skip the big drink, or I'll skip the popcorn and I'll just watch the movie. I'll get like a smaller snack or something like that. So that is costing the movie theater money. An intermission could address this, because then you look at the thing and you say, well, I'll have 2 hours to eat, and then I'll use the bathroom, and I'll have another hour. So I think that'll be fine. In fact, maybe I'll get a popcorn that I can refill halfway through, because the popcorn, costs so little money compared to how much, like, per volume, the price on it is so low that it's like, I think if they could sell more buckets of popcorn, even if they had to refill it more frequently, it would still be worth it. And I do think the one problem they would run into is they need more cashiers in lines, because this intermission isn't going to be more than like 10 minutes long, maybe 5. So you wouldn't want to have people like waiting in line, but that could be a nice way to sell more concessions. In fact, there could be people who go to the movie and then have that 5-minute intermission where they go back into the concession stand and go, you know what, I'll have a Bunch Crunch or something like that, Raisinets. Like, you could sell more concessions. That's why they do it in musicals. That's one reason. Like, I remember when we were doing musicals in college, they were like, we got to do an intermission here. And our director was like, we don't want to. And the theater was like, that's how we sell, things. We're doing it. They're doing it, and it was fine. They worked the intermission into it, but like that is an opportunity for them. Hell, they could even sell like merchandise for the Flash or something in the theater at that time. Kids at a movie like Avengers that leave the theater and then go to the gift shop or whatever, that can make some money. So what I'm saying is, regardless of what you think of the value of this for the average moviegoer, I think this is valuable for the theater. Like the theater is going to make money on this. But forget about that. Let's talk about just the experience of the movie theater goer. If you are me and you enjoy having a good snack, right? Like you have a big bucket of popcorn that you'll finish about half of, and you have a large drink that you'll finish about half of in a regular, length movie. Like when a movie is like 2.5, 3 hours long, you do have to start thinking, all right, what are we going to do here? Maybe when 2 hours rolls up, you start looking at your watch, you start saying, all right, well, got another hour of this, and I got to go to the bathroom, so I don't really have any choices here. I'm going to have to go, and you kind of budget. Maybe you'll use that RunP website, or you'll just go, this scene doesn't seem as important. I'm going to go and then come back, and, you'll miss a little bit if your partner's there, if you're a friend there, you'll ask them to do that little whisper, and I think we're all okay with that, right? Like, I don't like talking in movie theaters, but I understand the bring me up to speed whisper. If it's a 3-hour-long movie, you might do that twice. The problem is, I think, one of the big problems is, we are now in the climax of the movie. We're in the end of the second, beginning of the third act. We're missing valuable, crucial information, right? Like we are missing the big end game fight, some of it. We're missing like Hulk snapping and bringing everybody back to life, because that is when you start having to use the restroom. So I do think people have said like, it'll change, the intermission changes the way you see the movie, and that's not what the editors want. I'm like, I get that for sure. I also don't think the editors just want me to randomly miss 2 minutes in the end of the movie, right? Like, I think if I was the editor myself, this is just me, or a director, or writer, or anything like that, and I had a choice, I could say, I can carve out a 5-minute break somewhere in the middle. I get to pick. So it could be thematically relevant. It could be this resonant moment, right? Like that was what we did in Assassins, which was a play we did in college. Like we did the intermission right after, spoilers for Assassins, a musical about history, where Guiteau is hung. And it was a super like dark moment to send that intermission in, but it did really like, not like light a fire in the audience, but it really, you could tell it hit the audience. They had to sit with that for a second. And I thought that was pretty cool. But you get to pick, right? Let's say it's Endgame. Black Widow is killed on Vormir. Intermission. That is one option. You get to pick this 5-minute break that you get to put in the movie. Or 2 1-minute segments of the movie in the end just randomly get cut out. You don't get to pick which one. They're different for everybody. But 2 1-minute segments are gone. I obviously think that first one is ideal, right? Like I think that is so much better. You have more control. And it's like, yeah, maybe, you don't want that, but you're going to give more people a more full movie theater experience where they don't have to, figure out when to go to the bathroom, what to miss, and, go back and have to ask their friend what they saw. Like there's so much you are losing in the theater experience that I don't think it's worth it. And it's part of why, for me, if I have to make that choice, because the editor makes that choice, not great. If I have to make that choice, if it's like, do I want to wait a month to see this movie at home where I can pause it and go to the bathroom and come back? Or do I want to do that in the theater, pay a bunch of money, see it once, and miss a couple bits? That I'm seeing it at home. It's a no-brainer. One thing I've seen people say in response to this is like, well, why can't you just be an adult and sit through a 3-4 hour long movie or whatever? Which, I mean, I guess it's adult to like sit there and just be there, but it's not like I'm doing the intermission to go on my phone or something like that, or like, because I really, really want to go on TikTok. It's the bathroom. It's a pretty adult thing. Also, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if this is just for guys or whatever, but like this is, I think, a thing that you like pee more frequently as you get older because of prostate stuff or whatever. So if anything, this is a problem that would affect adults more than children. But the other fact, I've seen people say, hey, well, why don't you just sit there and I don't have to go to the bathroom? Why is this got to affect me? It's fair, I guess. You could say the same thing about like subtitles in movies. It's like, I speak this language, why do I have to have these subtitles? It's like, I don't know, because they figured some of the people it would help them enjoy the movie if they had them, right? Because assuming we're all supposed to actually have the popcorn and the soda in the movie theater, some people are going to experience this movie in a way that is fundamentally worse than other people. And why do we not say we should come up with a way for that second group of people that has to watch the movie in the worst way to be able to enjoy it as much as the first group, right? And I think that kind of comes to the solution, because that is how this is solved sometimes with the closed captioning screenings. Just make it some intermission and some not, right? Like, put the intermission screening, you even put it in the morning, make it the first screening of the day, one that probably people don't come to already that much, because I would make time. I promise you this. If Killers of the Flower Moon, especially one that like I know is good, or Oppenheimer is another one. I don't know. I like The Irishman. I didn't love it. But if Killers of the Flower Moon were playing at 1 p.m. and that was the one intermission screening of the day, I would make time. That would be something that I would do. Because I would appreciate it as someone who has wanted intermissions for a while. I'd be like, oh, cool, they got me an intermission screen. All right, we'll go to that. But just I feel like for the case Martin Scorsese and a lot of these directors are making, as far as like director's intent and stuff, this is the best way for someone in my position to experience this movie, and the best way for the movie theater to experience this movie. And hey, look what we've invented, this new kind of special screening that now a lot of people, including myself, would take advantage of, and will probably make the movie theater a bunch more money. Like, I understand all the people that are saying these editors don't want to do this, Martin Scorsese doesn't want to do this, why are we doing it? And this isn't me saying the only way to do it is like this. But it's just me saying, hey, as someone who's probably going to wait until this comes on Apple, this is why. If this movie underperforms, if people are looking at it and saying, why didn't people go see this 3.5 hour long movie that they could wait a month for? It's because of all these people who complain and can't use the... It's like, well, yeah, but we exist. We can't change besides not getting concessions at the movie theater, which again, I do because I enjoy them and I like supporting the movie theater. Besides not doing that, there's really not anything we can do about it. Besides, like, I guess, like, being uncomfortable for the last, hour, half hour of the movie or whatever. But I don't think that's what Martin Scorsese wants either. I mean, he may want us to feel uncomfortable for a different reason with this specific movie. But, like, I don't know. Especially since in my lifetime, movie theaters have changed so much. Forget about all these IMAX screenings. There are now movie screenings where there's 2 extra walls with the movie on it. I have never been to one of them. I hear they are not good. They seem not good. Maybe they're cool. I don't know. It seems like they only play some, like you watch like Top Gun or something. There's like some scenes where they have filmed extra stuff, but like, I don't know. It can't be that great. Like those exist. And that is way more of a departure from the original intention of the director than 1 5-minute intermission. There's many movie theaters now, including the ones that all the movie theater lovers really like, the Alamo Drafthouse, where waiters will come throughout the movie and give you food. Like you order food from a person and whisper to them. Like that was never the play before. And now that's fine. And I think that is way more distracting than a 5-minute intermission. Yes, I know. They know. And I think this is kind of cool. Like they get to watch the movie early and kind of know when the good time to come in and out is. So like they get to invent this intermission. They invent the time where they know they can make it in and out. And I think that's great. But like, I don't know. Besides just they really, really, really don't want to. I cannot see a good reason why not to do this, especially if it is limited, right? Like if half the movie screenings or one movie screening a day for these 3 or 4 hour long movies is the one with the intermission. I don't see a downside. Besides, they don't want to, which is fine. And that's valid. If they don't want to, they don't want to. But at the end of the day, I don't want to go sit through a 4 hour long movie without an intermission. And if I am getting the option to see the movie at my home in a month, I'll probably wait and do that. And I like movie theaters. I used to love going to the movie theaters. And for, like reasons I already said, like the talking and stuff like that, I'm not a humongous fan of it anymore. And obviously like COVID was something that also changed the way that just, I was like, well, am I going to go see this movie in theaters and take this risk? That was a big factor. But this is something too. It's not ideal. I don't think it's the most important thing in the world, but this is something that I've been beating the drum on for a while. And now this is at the foreground of the conversation. This, how should people watch movies? How should movie theaters present movies? And to be fair, one thing I'll say, I don't think it's great when the movie theaters put an intermission in without the movie director or movie editor's like consent or the production company's like approval. I think they should get to approve this. What I'm saying is, I think they should, like they're editing the movie. And I don't even think that like the producers of the studio should get to pick. I think this should be a pick. I think there should be something that like the director or the editor pick, because they know when the best time for this is, and it's part of the intent. It's the same way that like, I'm sure they don't want to show the logos for the studio before the movie, but they just have to. And they're all cool with it, right? Like people that are producing television shows on network, I'm sure a lot of the time they don't want to put a commercial break in, but you do. And part of it so that the channel itself can make money and sell advertisements, and then it can be free, and that is how it gets distributed. It's just part of the deal. I don't know. I don't want to be difficult, But at the end of the day, things would get more people to movie theaters, which would make the movie-going experience better, and it would make the movie theaters more money, which would let them do that one thing I've always wanted them to do: hire one bouncer per theater who's like the biggest guy ever, who can pick up a teen or an older person or whoever that will not put their phone away and throw them out of the movie theater like Jazz and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. That's a different video, though.